All right, welcome to the deep dive. You know the drill, right? We're all about getting to the heart of things, cutting through the noise, and really understanding what matters. No fluff, just those pure aha moments that leave you feeling like you've actually learned something valuable. It's all about efficiency.
Exactly. And today we're diving into a book that's had a huge impact, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's been translated into every language under the sun, and there's a reason for that. This book really gets to the core of what it means to be human. We're looking at excerpts from his experiences in the Nazi concentration camps, pretty intense stuff, and how he developed this whole framework, logotherapy, for finding meaning in life, even in the most extreme circumstances.
Absolutely. We've got Frankel's preface, some really raw descriptions of what it was like in the camps, and key parts from where he lays out his ideas, tragic optimism, and all that. It's going to be a journey.
It's pretty incredible, that he wrote this whole thing in just 9 days back in 1945. He didn't even think anyone would read it at first, just wanted to get his thoughts down.
And now it's like this landmark work that's touched so many people.
It's interesting, though, right? Frankl himself actually saw the book's popularity, not as him being famous or anything, but as a sign of how many people are struggling with this misery of our time. He thought there was this, deep, universal need for meaning that everyone was feeling.
Definitely makes you think, doesn't it? I think the way the book's structured is really important too. That first part, the autobiography, it's so raw, so real. You're right there with him in the camps. It really sets the stage for the second part where he gets into the theory of logotherapy.
You're right. Those two parts, the personal experience and then the theory, they're totally connected. They build on each other. His time in the camps, it gives so much weight to what he's saying about meaning. You see how he and the people around him found ways to keep going.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not just some abstract theory, right? It's grounded in this unbelievably real experience. I
Hmm.
mean, just thinking about that moment he describes right at the beginning when he enters the camp.
Hmm.
He talks about this strange, almost detached curiosity.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like he's observing himself from outside his body. It's kind of chilling, actually. He talks about how he realized in that moment that he had nothing to lose except his so ridiculously naked life. It's like his intellect is kicking in as a way to cope with the sheer terror of the situation.
It's like a defense mechanism, right? Stepping back mentally to survive.
Yeah, it's like creating a little bit of space between himself and the horror. And then he talks about how quickly survival strategies start emerging among the prisoners. Little things. Focusing on memories of loved ones, clinging to religion, finding humor in the darkest moments. Even noticing a tree, a sunset.
Moments of beauty in the midst of all that.
Yeah, it's like grasping onto those tiny bits of humanity like a lifeline. It shows how resilient we can be even when everything's trying to break us.
But it's also important to remember it wasn't all like unified resistance or whatever.
Yeah.
Frankl doesn't sugarcoat anything. He talks about the hard fight for existence, the things people did to survive.
Yeah, it was brutal. I mean, people stealing, lying, even hurting each other just to survive another day. And often it was about getting your name or a friend's name off those transport lists, the ones that meant going to the gas chambers.
Man, it's so hard to even imagine that level of desperation.
Right. And that's why it's so important to understand the reality of those camps. It's easy to romanticize it, but Frankel doesn't let you do that. He tells it straight. The constant fear, the threat of death, and he makes that really poignant observation.
That the best of us did not return.
It's heartbreaking, and it really highlights what he was trying to do with this book. He wasn't just writing a history of the camps. He was showing that even there, in that hell, life could still have meaning. This is a really powerful idea.
And that's where his own story becomes so essential, right? It's not just theory, it's lived experience. And then he goes into those psychological phases that prisoners went through. Admission, entrenchment, liberation.
Yeah.
The first one, admission. I mean, the shock alone must have been unbelievable.
Totally. It was like their whole world was shattered. Everything they knew, everything they thought was true, gone. He talks about having to become almost numb to the horror around them. Like he uses that phrase, floating up to heaven, when talking about his friend being sent to the crematorium.
Yeah, it's like a euphemism for the unimaginable.
Right. And that moment, when it dawns on him what the camp is truly for, the systematic extermination of people, it's just devastating.
And then on top of that, the dehumanization process itself.
stripped of their clothes, their hair, their belongings.
Their identity.
Everything that made them individuals. They were literally reduced to numbers. Frankel talks about how even a natural reaction like being disgusted by the filth was punished. There's this story about new prisoners being beaten for trying to wipe excrement off their faces. It's
just horrific.
Yeah, it's about breaking them down, taking away their self-respect, their dignity.
And that leads into the second phase, entrenchment.
Yeah.
And that's marked by this pervasive apathy.
It's almost like a defense mechanism, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like to survive emotionally, you have to shut down a bit.
Exactly. Their whole focus narrows down to just staying alive moment to moment. He talks about this strange feeling of relief at the end of the day. Not happiness, but just relief that they had survived.
It's hard to grasp that, isn't it? Finding relief in that kind of existence.
Yeah. But even within that, there were still glimmers of like an inner life. Frankel mentions this cultural hibernation, but there were two exceptions, politics and religion.
Right. So much talk about politics based on rumors and whispers. And then the deep faith that some people held on to.
It's like those two things, politics and religion, they offered a connection to something bigger than the camp. Politics, even if it was just rumors, gave them a sense of the outside world, of a future maybe. And religion, for those who believed, provided a source of strength, of hope, of meaning in the face of pure hopelessness.
It's fascinating how even in that environment, people found ways to connect with something larger than themselves.
Right. And it makes you think about what really matters to people. But under all that, I mean, the emotional toll must have been immense. Frankel talks about missing his loved ones so much it was like physical pain. And then the disgust. Not just at the filth, but at the whole situation.
The moral disgust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he tells this story about new prisoners being punished for showing disgust. It's like the guards wanted to crush any kind of normal human response.
To break their spirits completely.
And the way human life was devalued.
Treated like it meant nothing.
Dead bodies just tossed aside, beatings for no reason. Frankel even mentions this thing where there was like an asymmetry in the breadline and someone got beaten for it. It's just so arbitrary, so cruel. It's hard to wrap your head around it.
Yeah, the randomness of it all.
Yeah.
It's almost more terrifying than if there was some twisted logic to it.
And you see how it wears on him. There's this chilling story where a guard just throws a stone at him like he's an animal.
It's dehumanizing, treating someone like they're not even worth acknowledging as a person.
Yeah. And then there's the story with the heavy girders. Frankel tries to help his friend who has a dislocated hip, and he gets reprimanded. And then the guards accuse him of lacking camaraderie. It's just, it's mind-boggling.
It's like they've created this upside-down world where compassion is a weakness.
Exactly. But even in all that, Frankel shows moments of defiance. Like when he confronts that brutal foreman.
It tells him he's a doctor.
Yeah, it's like a spark of self-respect, a refusal to be completely broken. And he also talks about these tiny moments of negative happiness.
Like when the delousing didn't coincide with an air raid alarm.
Yeah, or finding a bit of extra food, things that wouldn't even register in normal life.
But in the camps, they were like beacons of hope.
And then, you know, the rare instances of actual kindness. He mentions this cook who treated all the prisoners fairly, which was unusual.
A glimmer of humanity in all that darkness.
Exactly. But it makes you realize how easy it would be to lose yourself in that environment. Everything becomes about survival, and you risk losing your values, your self-respect.
Becoming, as Frankel puts it, an animal.
Right. And there's this story that really gets to me about the transport of sick men. They were so weak they had to be carted out, and some of them had already died.
But they were still loaded onto the carts.
Yeah, because they needed to keep the numbers on the list correct. It shows how much human life had been devalued. Just a number on a page.
It's hard to comprehend. But even amidst all that horror, there are these moments of, I don't know, transcendence maybe. He talks about missing his wife so much, it was like she was with him.
Yeah, the image of his wife became this lifeline for him. He talks about realizing that love wasn't just an emotion, but like the ultimate goal, the source of true happiness. Remember that quote, "The salvation of man is through love and in love."
Yeah, that one stuck with me. And then there's that really powerful experience he has while working in the trench. He talked about hearing this internal yes and seeing an image of light coming from a farmhouse.
That moment really gets to the heart of his philosophy. It's like, even in the most horrible conditions, you can still find meaning, purpose. Remember that phrase, et lux in tenebris licet.
The light shines in the darkness. It's beautiful and so profound, especially coming from someone who experienced such darkness.
Right. And he emphasizes those little acts of kindness between prisoners, like sharing a bit of food or just a moment of connection.
And Franco was trying to reconstruct his manuscript in his head,
Right.
the one that was confiscated.
Yeah. It's like these things, even if they seem small, they were acts of defiance. They helped him hold on to his humanity, his sense of self.
It's like they were just surviving, they were resisting.
And he even tells the story about teaching a fellow prisoner to develop a sense of humor, calling it a weapon of the soul.
That's so Frankel, finding meaning and resilience in unexpected places.
Yeah, he saw humor as a way to rise above the situation, to connect with each other, to hold on to hope. And then there's that analogy he uses, the one about gas filling a chamber.
Right, to explain how suffering is relative.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't matter how big or small the suffering is from the outside. It fills the whole person. It's their whole world.
It's a powerful way to think about it, and it all leads to this idea that hope and meaning are essential for survival.
Absolutely. He tells this really sad story about a composer who had a dream about being liberated, but then the date in his dream passed, and he just lost the will to live.
It's like his hope died, and he died with it.
And Frankel noticed that there was an increase in deaths in the camps between Christmas 1944 and New Year's 1945.
Because people had hoped to be home for Christmas, and when that didn't happen.
It was like the disappointment was too much to bear.
And that's where he introduces this really important idea.
Yeah.
It's not about what we expect from life, but what life expects from us.
Yeah. It's about taking responsibility for finding the answers, for fulfilling the tasks that are given to each of us.
It's about finding meaning in the face of whatever life throws at you.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about logotherapy itself. Frankl calls it the third Viennese school of psychotherapy. And he focuses on the will to meaning, right?
Yeah, he contrasts that with Freud's will to pleasure and Adler's will to power. It's like he's saying there's something even deeper driving us.
Right. He believed this will to meaning was the most fundamental human drive, this search for purpose. And it's not just about feeling good or being powerful, it's something more.
And what happens when that will to meaning is blocked? He talks about this existential frustration.
Yeah, that's when you feel this emptiness, like your life has no direction. And he says it can lead to neurogenic neuroses.
Neurogenic, that's a new one.
Yeah. It's not your typical psychological problem, like from childhood trauma or whatever. These neuroses are rooted in this neurological dimension.
So like the spiritual side of things.
Something like that. It's the uniquely human part of us that searches for meaning, for values. It's like our souls are hurting, not just our minds.
Interesting. So it's deeper than just regular anxiety or depression.
Exactly. And Frankl, he has this great image. He says, sitting erect, but must hear things which sometimes are very disagreeable to hear. It's like, instead of just looking inward like in traditional therapy, you have to face these big questions about meaning head on.
You can't hide from them.
Right. And he even says that suffering itself can become meaningful.
Really? Suffering could be good.
Well, not good exactly, but he's saying that if your suffering comes from this struggle for meaning, from this existential frustration, then it can be a human achievement. It's not a disease. It's part of the human experience.
It's about how you face it, how you find meaning in it.
Exactly. And he uses his own experience as an example. When his manuscript was confiscated, his desire to rewrite it helped him survive.
Yeah.
It even helped him recover from typhus.
That's powerful. It's like having a purpose, a reason to keep going, can literally keep you alive.
Right. And then he talks about new-eye dynamics. It's this idea that there needs to be some tension between the meaning you want to fulfill and you, the person who has to fulfill it.
Like a creative tension.
Yeah, like a driving force. He says this tension is actually healthy. Without it, we'd just be stagnant.
That makes sense. We need something to strive for.
Exactly. And that brings us to the existential vacuum.
Right, that feeling of emptiness, of meaninglessness.
Yeah. Frankl noticed this was a big problem in the 20th century. He thought it was connected to the loss of traditional values and instincts. People were just lost.
And that can manifest in so many ways, right? Boredom, depression, aggression.
Even addiction. He talks about Sunday neurosis, people feeling aimless and empty when they have free time. It's like they don't know what to do with themselves.
I think we can all relate to that a little bit.
Totally. So then, Frankl outlines 3 ways to find meaning.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, by creating something, doing something worthwhile. Second, by experiencing something deeply, connecting with someone, especially through love. And third, by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering.
Okay, that last one is really interesting. Finding meaning in suffering.
Yeah, it's not about seeking out suffering. But when it comes, it's about how you respond to it.
And he talks about love being this way to really see and understand another person.
Yeah. Not just romantic love, but any kind of deep connection where you recognize another person's potential and help them fulfill it.
So it's about seeing the best in someone and helping them become that.
And he even says that you can find meaning in seemingly hopeless situations by recognizing the potential for human dignity and resilience.
Hmm.
There's this really touching story about an old doctor who lost his wife, but finds meaning in the fact that she didn't have to suffer anymore.
That's so powerful. Finding a reason to be grateful, even in grief.
And he's very clear that suffering isn't necessary for meaning, but it's possible to find meaning in suffering. And he's also against intentionally seeking out suffering.
That's important. Suffering for the sake of suffering doesn't really get you anywhere.
Exactly. Then there's that story about him finding a page from a Hebrew prayer book in the camp. It was like a sign, a challenge for him to live his beliefs.
Sometimes those little things can be really powerful reminders.
Right. And Frankel noticed that more and more of his patients were coming to him with existential questions, not just the usual neuroses. It's like people were really struggling with this lack of meaning.
It's a sign of the times, maybe.
Yeah. And then he tells this story about a mother caring for her disabled son. It's a logodrama, he calls it.
A logodrama.
It's like a way of showing how meaning plays out in real life. This mother, she imagines herself on her deathbed looking back on her life, and she realizes that caring for her son was her greatest source of meaning.
Even though it was probably really hard.
Right. And he contrasts that with another woman who regrets her life because she focused on superficial things.
So it's about figuring out what truly matters.
Exactly. Then Frankel brings up this concept of super meaning.
Super meaning. That sounds intense.
It's like the ultimate meaning of life, the big picture. But he says it's probably beyond our human capacity to fully understand.
Okay, that's a little mind-blowing. So what are we supposed to do then?
He says we have to learn to live with that uncertainty, to accept that we might never fully grasp the meaning of everything.
It's like having faith, maybe.
Something like that. Trusting that there is meaning, even if we can't see it all.
And then there's that story about his daughter and the measles. She asks why a good God would send her the measles.
It's like this really simple question that gets at the complexity of suffering and meaning. And then there's the rabbi who found meaning in his suffering because he saw it as a way to be worthy of joining his children in heaven.
It's amazing how people find meaning in different ways.
And Frankel says that nothing we truly experience is ever lost. Having been is also a kind of being, and perhaps the surest kind. It's like even our past suffering is part of who we are.
So even the hard times have value.
Right. And logotherapy is all about action, about actively engaging with life. He uses the analogy of a calendar. It's up to us to fill the days with meaning.
Yeah. We're not just passengers, we're the drivers. He even talks about taking pride in the suffering we've overcome.
It's like those experiences have shaped us, made us stronger. Okay, now for some of the techniques he talks about, paradoxical intention, for example.
Yeah, that one sounded kind of strange, like wishing for the thing you fear.
Exactly. He gives the example of a doctor who's terrified of sweating. The idea is, by trying to make yourself sweat, you kind of break the cycle of anxiety.
It's like tricking your mind.
Yeah. And there's a story about a kid who accidentally used this technique to stop stuttering.
Wow, so it can actually work. And what about dereflection?
That's about focusing your attention away from the problem. It's helpful when people are too self-conscious, like with sexual problems. By focusing outward on something else, you can kind of take the pressure off.
That makes sense. Now, he also talks about this nothing butness theory, which he's not a fan of.
Right. It's this idea that we're nothing but our biology or psychology, that we have no real freedom. Frankel believed we always have a choice.
So we're not just robots programmed by our genes or our upbringing.
He says true freedom isn't about being free from things, but free to take a stand toward them. Like even in the camps, he still had the freedom to choose his attitude.
That's a really powerful idea. And there's that story about Dr. Che, the mass murderer of Steinhoff.
He was this really brutal guy, but later in life he showed compassion to other prisoners. It's like a reminder that people can change.
That even the worst of us have the potential for good.
And Frankel, he had this psychiatric credo.
Okay, what's that?
He believed that even people with severe mental illness still have dignity and a core of freedom. He said if we didn't believe that, psychiatry would be pointless.
We have to believe that people can change, can get better.
Yeah. And he wanted a more humanized psychiatry, one that sees the whole person, not just the illness. He said that in the camps, you saw the whole range of human behavior, the best and the worst.
So it's not about our circumstances, it's about the choices we make. Now let's talk about tragic optimism.
Ah, yes. This is a big one. It's about finding optimism even in the face of tragedy.
Okay, how do you do that?
Frankl outlines 3 ways: turning suffering into achievement, seeing guilt as an opportunity for change, and using the fact that life is short as motivation to live meaningfully.
So it's not about ignoring the bad stuff, but finding a way to be positive despite it.
Right. He says true optimism, faith, and love, they can't be forced. They have to come from a real reason.
It has to be authentic.
Yeah. And he contrasts this with the American idea of just be happy. He's like, no, it's about finding a reason to be happy by fulfilling your potential for meaning.
So it's about working towards something, not just chasing a feeling.
Right. And he uses laughter as an analogy. You can't just decide to laugh. There has to be a reason. And he talks about hyperintention, where trying too hard to achieve something like pleasure actually backfires.
It's like the more you focus on it, the further away it gets.
And then there's this thing he calls give-up-itis. He saw it in prisoners of war and concentration camp inmates.
What's that? Like giving up on life.
Yeah, it's like they lost their sense of meaning and just focused on immediate pleasure, even if it was self-destructive.
Like a feeling of hopelessness. He compares it to the no future generation and drug use.
Right. It's like when you don't see a future for yourself, you just give in to instant gratification.
It's a coping mechanism, but not a healthy one.
Exactly. And Frankl, he stresses that existential despair, while it's not a disease in itself, it can lead to real problems: depression, aggression, addiction.
So it's important to address that feeling of meaninglessness.
And he has this advice for people who are suicidal. He says they have a responsibility to survive, to see if a solution or meaning might emerge.
Even if it seems hopeless, there's always a chance things could change.
Right. And he mentions the study with Boy Scouts where their aggression decreased when they were given a common purpose.
So having something to work towards together can bring people together.
And Frankl really emphasizes that meaning isn't some abstract thing. It's found in specific situations. He compares it to scenes in a movie that only make sense in the context of the whole story.
It's about finding meaning in the everyday moments.
And he says recognizing meaning is like an aha moment. It's realizing what needs to be done, what you can do in that specific situation.
It's about being present, paying attention.
And he talks about the role of our conscience, which he sees as guided by values that are rooted in our biology. He even mentions this idea of a biological a priori, like an innate moral sense.
It's interesting to think about how our biology and our values are connected. And he talks about how suffering can actually ennoble people if they face it with dignity. He mentions the American POWs in Vietnam who found growth in their captivity.
Yeah, and there's this story about a Polish cardiologist in the Warsaw Ghetto. He said true heroism wasn't just about surviving, but about maintaining your dignity even when facing death.
That's a powerful image.
And Frankl, he says that while we should try to change the circumstances that cause suffering, it's also important to know how to suffer well, to face with grace. He points out that people really admire those who can do that.
It's about resilience, about inner strength.
And then he gets into guilt. He talks about this mysterium iniquitatis, the mystery of evil. And he says that even criminals often want to take responsibility for their actions rather than being seen as just machines.
It's about recognizing that we have free will, that we make choices.
And he talks about collective guilt, which he thinks is wrong. It's about judging individuals, not whole groups.
It's about personal responsibility.
Right. And he says that the fact that life is temporary should motivate us to live fully, to make the most of every moment. He has this great quote, "Live as if you were living for the second time and had acted as wrongly the first time as you were about to act now."
Like a call to action to live with intention.
And he warns against confusing human dignity with usefulness, which is a problem with nihilism, this idea that nothing has meaning.
So it's not about what you produce, but about who you are.
And he emphasizes that logotherapy isn't a dogma. It's about encouraging people to think for themselves, to find their own meaning. He even talks about degurification, getting rid of the idea of blindly following a leader.
It's about being your own authority.
And he challenges Freud's idea that people become uniform under extreme hunger. He uses the concentration camps as an example, saying that actually people become more individual, showing the best and the worst of humanity.
So even in the worst circumstances, we still have the power to choose who we want to be.
Exactly.
So to sum it all up, What are the key takeaways here?
Well, we've explored this fundamental human drive for meaning, the fact that you can find meaning even in suffering, the importance of hope and responsibility, and this idea that we ultimately have the freedom to choose our attitude in any situation. Pretty deep stuff.
No kidding. I feel like this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. And for you listening, here's something to ponder.
Yeah.
Think about those times in your own life where you found meaning in unexpected places, or when you chose your attitude in a tough situation. How does what we've talked about, Frankel's ideas, how does that change how you see those experiences? If this has sparked your curiosity, I really encourage you to read Man's Search for Meaning. It's a book that can truly change the way you see the world.